Is your PowerPoint presentation file misbehaving? Maybe the images and the content are not lining up. That annoying background is always in the way, and the page number and footers have a mind of their own. Now it doesn't matter if you're using a default template from PowerPoint, you bought a commercial template, or you paid someone to create a custom template for you. That pesky file is still not working as intended, and I'm about to show you why. In this masterclass, you're going to learn how to be a PowerPoint template master. You'll learn how to set up new templates, turn existing presentations into a proper template, and diagnose and fix misbehaving files. Because if you're having issues with your template, chances are it was not set up properly. But the good news is that PowerPoint is the universal file format for presentations. Which means if you set up your template correctly, you can import it into Keynote for those who are using a Mac or into Google Slides, and your file will still work. PowerPoint is also the only presentation tool that allows you to import scalable vector graphics, also known as SVG, and edit them directly on your slides. And that's why, in my opinion, PowerPoint still rules them all. So if you invest some time here with me today and learn how PowerPoint templates works, it's going to make your life so much easier next time you start working on a presentation. So are you ready? Let's get started and work on your next template. So let's start with part 1, template setup. Now, if you understand the structure of templates and how to set up a new template from scratch, it's going to make it so much easier for you to convert future file into templates, to merge files, to apply styles to particular files, and also to diagnose and fix misbehaving files. So that's why in part 1, we're starting with the template setup. More specifically, you're going to learn about the difference between themes and templates, how to work with the master slide setup, how to create default settings, how to create custom slide layouts based on use case, and how to import graphics and create custom image placeholders. So let's start with the difference between a theme and templates. Themes are files that have an extension of THMX, and they come as a default from PowerPoint. They're usually a combination of fonts, colors, and backgrounds. A template is a file that ends with POTX, and it's usually a theme, but it also has a sample content. That could be sample slides that are used on a regular basis. It could also have a style guide. So let me show you what I mean. So here I am in a client's folder, and you can see here I've created 3 different files for them. One is THMX, which is a theme. Now, if you look at the preview, you're going to notice that it's just showing me a bunch of boxes. So there's really no content in this box. If I click on the POTX, which is a template, there is some content in that file. And if I click on the PPTX, which is the regular files from PowerPoint, this file also has some content. So let's see what the difference is between all 3, so that when you're working on files, whether it's for yourself, for your teams and departments, or for client projects, you can identify what type of file format you can share with them. So I'm going to start with the theme. I'm going to double click on this file, and let's just open it. Now, once you take a look at this file, you're going to notice that there's really no content in this file. But what that file does contain is it contains some pre-existing layouts that I created as part of that theme. So if I go into View, Master, Slide Master, where the usual templates are, you can see that this file has some customization to it. It's got some section breaks, it's got some image placeholders, and some slanted areas. So you can see that's what a theme looks like. Now, this is a blank file, so let me just show you what the theme of this blank file would be. If I look at it, you're going to see that there's really nothing here. So if I'm trying to check what theme this file is, I can go into View, because every file in PowerPoint has a theme connected to it. And that's how you would diagnose it. You would be in the file itself, and you would go into Design, and you're going to click here under Themes. Now, you're going to notice if I hover on this presentation, it says that this presentation is using the Office theme, which makes sense because that's a starting file from PowerPoint. So that's when you start a default file, that's where this theme is. Now, Microsoft does give you some pre-existing themes that you can pick from, but personally, I don't like to use them because there are millions of people in the world who use PowerPoint, and chances are they're going to be picking one of these. So I don't want my presentations or any of the presentations for my clients to look like something that millions of people use around the world. So that's that's why when I'm creating files, I start usually with the theme. So the theme is kind of helps me set the font, I set the colors, I set the image placeholders. And then when I'm done, when I have all this customizations for my clients, what I end up doing is I go back to the normal. So this file is in place, it's got their logo and everything. Now I can go into design, and if I click on themes, I have the option to save current theme, and I can give it a new name. Now in this particular case, this theme is already saved. I've already saved it because I already showed you how I opened this file. Now notice when I hover on this presentation at the top, notice what it says. It says Newcastle because that's the file that I gave it. And if I click on the custom, right now Newcastle is the only one because that's the only one I have left in my themes folder. So now you can see the difference of the pre-made that come with PowerPoint. These are the themes, and that's how PowerPoint works. So if you understand how themes work, it'll help you build better templates as well. Now let me show you the file format again, and now let's go into a PowerPoint, into a template. So I want to show you the common denominator between the two files and what's different. So this one is a POTX, which is the PowerPoint file format for a template. So if I open it, now you can see here I've opened it. This file has some content in it because I wanted to give the client their brand style guide. So I wanted to show them what their colors are, how they can use the logo, and some section breaks so that they can take this file and test it. So usually what I do is I give them a template and I say, test it over a week or two. See, does this fill all your company needs? And then we start creating some common slides that they might need for their organization. So this file is still in progress. So you can see here we still don't have a lot of content in place because it's still in testing. But I have the image placeholders, and I'm trying to think, how do I create a theme that fits their use case on a daily basis? Now, what's common between the two files? Now, if you notice, this was the theme and this was the template, is that PowerPoint did not give them the same name I opened the file. Now, if you look at the file here, I had specifically said Newcastle template, and this was Newcastle group theme. So why did PowerPoint do that? Because PowerPoint is trying to prevent me or someone else to overwrite the file. Because this is a theme, we don't want to overwrite it unless we go into design, save as theme. And that's how you maintain the integrity of a brand in the organization. Because if you give your client a standard template like this one here in PowerPoint, and now I open this file, notice what happens. It has some content in it, but now anyone in the organization can go and start working on this file, messing up the layout, messing up the design. They might even go into view, slide master, start changing the fonts and the colors. And then if they say save, let me just go back to normal. I'm waiting for PowerPoint to, there you go, you see the file name? It kept the name, so now if they go file save, PowerPoint is going to let them overwrite the design, and we don't want that. So now you know the difference between the standard PowerPoint files, the themes, and the templates. Now, templates, the way you would save them is, now you know how to save a theme. As I showed you before, you would go into the theme, save current theme. So how do you save a template? Now, if you saved a file and it has some designs in it and some content that you want your organization to use on a regular basis, usually, for example, sales presentations could be templates as well, you would just go into File, Save As, and then you can see here the different options. So by default, PowerPoint is going to say Presentation PPTX. If you want to save it as a template, you'll have to pick POTX. Now, there are old file formats. You can notice that before it used to be POT. That's the old one, but most people are now on the new format, so make sure it's a POTX. And the same thing with presentations. Some people still save as a PPT, which is the old file format. If anyone has the software from before 2003, I doubt many people do, but maybe there are. But usually just go with the default PPTX, template, POTX, or if you're saving a theme, you'll have to go into the design and save it right from here. Now, when you save a current theme, I just wanted to show you where the file ends up, because so many people save it and then they say, well, where is that file? How can I give it to my clients? So let me show you where that file folder is. Now you can do a search online and go to Microsoft and Google to try to find the location of your folder, because what's going to happen is that location of the folder is going to be different based on the operating system you're using, the computer, whether you're using a Mac or a PC, the version of the operating system, let's say Windows, and what version of a Mac you're using, and also the version of the software. So there's so many variables and it's so hard to find that folder. And that's why this question always comes up. So my best tip for you is, if you don't know where it is to just go into the design and just save anything. Save. You'll notice here I already have one, but in your case it's going to be blank, the custom. So just click on Save Current Theme and you'll notice this is the folder. So just go in here and give it a name, Testing. So I'm doing that because in your case this is going to be empty, whereas in my case I already have a file in here I can search for. But in your case, if that's new, just call it Testing or whatever you want. Give it the name that you're looking for. And now when you save it, this is going to go into your themes folder. So now you can just go open the folder. For example, in this case, this is the presentation folder that I want to share with my client, and I want to look for that theme. So I'm just going to search for it, and you'll notice right away it shows up because that's the only file on my computer with that name. Now, if I look at the bottom, I can see the path, and you can see why it's complex to find specifically on a Mac, because it's a hidden folder. It's kind of hidden in some of these numbered folders that's very hard to find. So I'm going to click on it here, and now I've located, I can see my testing theme here, and now I can either duplicate it, copy it and share it with my client, or copy it and put it in their folder. So I hope this makes your life easier, because that question does comes up a lot for me on where's that folder. Now in my case, I like to keep my themes folder clean. Once I've finished on a client project, I remove it from my themes folder so that I can keep it clean and just send the files over to the client. However, I do keep the colors and the fonts, and we will be talking about that in the next segment. So now you know the difference between themes and templates and when to use them. So really, the common denominator is that both themes and templates have similar functionalities, and that's why people sometimes use them interchangeably. For example, they both help you with brand consistency. As you saw, we cannot overwrite the files. So once you create that themes and colors and content, every time you open that file, you have to save it under a new name. So that's how you keep your brand consistency. They also help save time, because that way you can apply quick styles. If you have placeholders, fonts, and the colors in place, it saves time with the formatting. And it also, as I just said with formatting, it makes it easier, because most people don't know how to put the image on the slide and how to make it look good. But if you've got these image placeholders and the content placeholders in place, then you'll get that consistency, and it'll be easy for people to format slides and save time. So now next we're going to start with the master slide setup. We're going to learn how to build a strong template foundation for brand management and business scalability. Now, to build a strong foundation, we need to know, how does PowerPoint work with themes and templates? So I've just started a brand new file. So all I did was File, New Presentation, and you'll notice that by default, PowerPoint has given me a standard Office theme, which has that blank white layout and some of these pre-existing slide layouts, the two columns, some of the standard content. But apart from that, there's not much going on in here. So to customize it, I'm going to have to go into View, Master, Slide Master. And this is where I get to now control some of the colors, the fonts, and the layouts. Now, a common mistake that a lot of people do, and I do myself, is I used to come in here and start deleting items. Now, I highly recommend you don't delete any of the elements on the first slide. The first slide is the master layout. And if you click here on the master layout, you'll notice that there's these 5 elements. It's the title, and you've also got the content, page number, footer, etc. Now, these 5 elements control the rest of the theme for you. So if you start deleting elements on the first slide, you're going to create some conflicts. Let me show you what I mean. So for example, here we've got the footer and the date. Now, I used to make that mistake. I used to come in here and thinking, well, okay, I'm going to remove clutter. I'm going to remove the date because I don't need it, even though that date impacts the rest of the slides. So I used to come in here, delete it. Now, notice what happens. I've immediately created a different font here from the footer than from the date that was here before. That's because now PowerPoint has realized that there's a disconnection between what's happening on this slide and on this slide. Now, this might seem like a simple error, but it might create future errors when you're merging presentations or when you're reapplying themes. So that's why you need to keep these main elements in place, so that way you can click and reapply and apply themes to different presentations. So if I click on here now, you'll notice I've created a little bug that used to work before. So example, in PowerPoint, I can click on hide footer, show footer. You can see now when I say it's show footer, that date is gone. But if I try to hide it again, look what happened. I've already jammed that file. I've created a conflict that now will create future problems for me. And so if you start experiencing some buggy files and themes that are not working well, chances are someone has deleted some of these main core items. So that's why I really can't stress enough. Just keep these 5 elements in place and then move them around to where you think they would fit. Because this slide is not really used that much. This is more to control the rest of the slides. So for example, when you're on the normal view and you click here, you try to click one of these layouts, you're not picking the first slide, you're just picking the subsequent slides. So that's why don't delete anything from here, just keep them where they are, and then we'll start formatting them in the next section. Now, the next caveat I wanted to say on building a strong foundation is you'll notice that PowerPoint by default has given us some pre-existing structures. So if I right-click on this slide and say rename, you're going to notice that PowerPoint has given it a title slide, because PowerPoint is always looking, where is that PowerPoint slide? So if you start deleting these now and creating new ones with different names, you're also going to create some conflict for yourself. So I recommend keep the standard. These are the standard 10 slides, including the last 2. They might seem odd. I used to delete them because they've got that vertical text, but in some languages that could be needed. And now that you know that sometimes you can apply and reapply themes, PowerPoint is going to be looking for these slides to match them. So every time you click here on the theme, let's just go back in place, and you switch themes, PowerPoint is going to look, you can see here, now I've clicked on that one because I've got the two column theme, and I can just go click here again and then click on the first one, which would be the title. So let's go back into the master slide and see what PowerPoint has done. You'll notice that the first slide still has the 5 elements. We do need them. And then you can start creating subsequent slides. And if I right click, you'll notice that PowerPoint is still calling this a title slide. And if I go to the bottom, you'll notice that the vertical ones are in place. Now, if we had deleted some of the old ones and now we try to reapply themes, that's where some of the conflict could occur. So I hope you understand now why we need to keep the 5 main elements in place and why we need to keep these subsequent slides in place. Now, in the next segment, we're going to start working on customizing this first slide. We're going to pick our fonts, our colors, and once we do that, we'll start working on some of the customizations of the layouts, keeping the main content in place and also creating some additional slides that will make our life easier. So let's start with the default font settings, how to choose the right font family and font size for your presentation. So to set our default font settings, we have to be once again into the slide master. So now we're going to be doing that on the first slide with the first 5 components that I talked to you about. Now, if I click on one of them, you'll notice that by default, PowerPoint is giving them a heading. So you'll notice that the top title is a heading. And if I click on anything else on the slide, PowerPoint is identifying them as a body. Look at that here at the body. That's because the theme right now is showing the headings and body. Now, a common mistake that I used to make as well, and I see many of the files people do, is they click on the title and they say, well, I don't like that default that just came with PowerPoint or whatever theme. Maybe I want to click and pick this font so it looks something a little bit fancy. But now look what ends up happening. If I click on it, you'll notice that PowerPoint does not recognize that this is a heading anymore. So anytime you try to update the theme and merge files that have other themes, that's where some of the conflicts will occur. So to avoid these conflicts, we're going to have to change the default settings from the theme itself, not from the first slide. So we're going to click here on Slide Master, and we're going to click on the drop down here under Fonts and pick a new font theme. Now you'll notice that just like the other themes with the colors, PowerPoint is giving us a starting point. And the starting point is usually your default font on your computer. So whether you're on a PC or a Mac, right now Microsoft uses the Calibri as the starting point. So for your template, you can just keep it as is, or you can go pick one of these safe fonts. Now, the reason I call them safe fonts is because these starting points are common fonts that are available on most people's computers. So if I pick something that's available on most people's computer, then anyone can go open that file and that font will still look somehow consistent. But if I pick a custom font, kind of like what I created here for one of my client project, Bebas, and that font is not available on most people's computer. So while on my computer it looks fine, you can see here that PowerPoint is recognizing that this is the heading and this is the body. That might create an issue for some people. That's because there's something called safe fonts and something called custom fonts. So safe fonts, I created this here just to show you the difference, are fonts that are available on everyone's computer, and they are safe because no matter who you share the file with, the file will look the same. But if you start using some of the free custom fonts, like what I'm using here right now, for example, my computer is using, my template uses the Rubik font from Google, and most people don't have that. So what you have to do is you have to go to Google, download the font, put it on your computer, and then that font will appear consistent. Especially if you want to share it as a theme, you don't want to use the embed theme. The PowerPoint does have an embed theme font option, but it might not work on all computers. So that's why I highly recommend that you tell your clients, if you're giving them a custom font, you let them know that we're using a free custom font, or whether you buy a premium font. Like, there are thousands of fonts that you can buy that look really fancy, and you can install them on your system and then customize the font. But before we do that, I wanted to show you the caveat about the safe fonts. For example, look at this safe font file that I created here. You'll notice that this one is using the heading, kind of my template, the Rubik. And then I created a second slide. For example, if this is manual formatting or even set in the template, this font looks really fancy. It looks nice on my computer. But what happens if I share this file with someone that does not have it? So for example, this file right now is saved on my OneDrive. If you are a member with Microsoft OneDrive, you'll have access to that drive and you can save files on it. And the advantage is that if you do that, you can click on the share here button. If you notice it on PowerPoint, that's of course only available to people who have that membership. So I'm going to click share and I'm going to copy link. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to say, let me just show you how it happens. If I click on copy, it's going to ask me, do you want to share it as view only or view with edit? I'm going to say edit. So for example, if you're collaborating on the file with someone else, I'm going to click edit. So now you see it did copy it to my clipboard, and now I'm going to go open a new web browser. So I'm going to go into my Safari, put that link, and I'm going to click enter and see what happens now. Now I'm opening PowerPoint for the web browser. So the first slide looks okay. That's because it's using the Rubik font, which is similar to Calibri. Even though PowerPoint did, make some adjustment, that adjustment is not visible. But now notice the second font. I'm going to click here on the second slide. You'll see that PowerPoint is not displaying it properly, even though my second slide looks fancy on my desktop. That's because I have the font. But someone that does not have the font on their computer, it's just going to look basic. So nothing really much happens here. So this is where you get to decide, how do you want to work with your files? Who are you sharing with? If you're just working on it yourself, kind of like myself, I work with myself or my close team that know my fonts, then I can use some custom fonts and I can make sure that my team also has that on their computer. But if you're sharing it with a client, or if you're going to a conference and they say, give us your file, we're going to put it on our computer, and that computer does not have your font, then you're going to mess up your whole design. So I wanted to bring up that caveat before I walk you through how to create the custom font. Now, something else is available on a PC that's not available on the Mac. So for example, I'm going to go back here now to my presentation. Let me just show you the custom presentation. If I go in here and I click on the fonts, you're going to notice that at the top, I have some of my custom fonts that I created. For example, my Rubik font that I created for my brand. If I click on it, you're going to notice that right away the presentation has updated the heading and the body to the Rubik font. So now I can go and make that bold and customize the color. But that option to customize is only available on a PC. It's not available on the Mac. So I put it on a slide so I can show you what it might look like. Because I do know that a lot of people now do use a Mac. Let me just get that presentation here again. So I'm going to go open that here. And this is what it really looks like. So if you're on a PC, once you click on that drop down at the button at the bottom, there's going to be something that says customize. Now I cannot show it to you because I don't have that on my computer. But when you click that customize option, you're going to end up with this drop down box or a pop-up box that lets you choose your heading font and your body font. And once you save that, you can give it a name and click save. And now it'll get saved into that themes folder. Remember how I showed you that themes folder? So let's go back in here and I'm going to search for my Rubik, because I do have one here, Rubik.xml. So now I go back and I notice I'm back in the themes folder. So if you notice under the theme folders, that's where your custom fonts get saved. So you can create as many custom fonts as you like, families. So I do that. I've got my Rubik one here, and anytime I create one for my clients. So that's why I keep them, because on a Mac, sometimes I might want to reuse them. For example, Leto is another Google font that I like. I might want to use it for another theme. So I start creating some of my custom themes. Quicksand is also another Google font, Roboto. They're all free fonts and I want to probably reuse them. So I've saved them and I keep them here in my theme fonts. And when I do, I'll be able to go back to that presentation. So let me just go back to that presentation we were working on here, and then I'll be able to click and choose them. For example, as I showed you, I picked the Rubik. I can go and click the Leto. You can see here right away now my presentation is customizing to some of these custom. It says at the top custom and at the bottom office. So what happens if you're on a Mac and you don't have that option? So on a Mac, that step is a little bit more complex because you're going to have to go open that XML file and make some changes. So let me show you. I'm here in the theme fonts. I'm going to go open one of them. So for example, I'm going to go open the Rubik, right click. That's where you will need an XML editor. Usually it's an HTML file. So if you cannot do that yourself, you can probably ask someone who knows how to. We usually do that for our clients, or you can just find someone and tell them to make a quick change. It's actually just a few words. You'll just open one of the files. Let me just show you. I'm going to open it with Adobe Dreamweaver here right now. So once you open that XML file, it's going to look something like this. It's a simple code that lets Microsoft know what is the scheme of your font and what you want to use for a major font. So the major font, that would be the heading, and what you want to use for a minor font, that would be the body. Now you can put whatever font you like. In this particular case, that's my Rubik font that I'm using for my template. So for example, if I wanted to change it to something else, I would have to click here and let's say Leto. Leto is another font that's available for, oops, why is it that 0? Let me just pick here, Leto. And let's say I want the body as well to be Leto. That's a common Google font. Now, in some cases, you can put Leto bold, but I tried that and I found that it could create some conflict. So I'd recommend you don't. You can just leave it as Leto here, and then I was going to call that top one as well, Leto. So these are the really three options you would change. You just put that, and now we can save that file. So I'm going to go save as. Now I already have that Leto family on my theme. You can see here I already have it. So I'm just going to call it something else. I'm going to call it Leto testing so that you can see how it shows up on my PowerPoint. So I'm going to call it Leto testing. Save. So now I can go back into that starter presentation. And if I click on the fonts, I'm going to notice that Leto testing. You see it here? That's the one I just saved. So if I click on it, it's changed the font to Leto. Now, what if I wanted that to be bold? And if you recall, I mentioned not to add that on the XML. That's where you can do that customization here. So it's okay to pick bold, italic here, but it's not okay to change the font family from the top. So I don't want to be doing this and bold and italic. That's not going to work. I need to be picking always the heading for the top, and then I can do some customization. I can change the color. I can give it whatever other formatting I want. But the main thing we need to highlight is that major and minor, if you remember, the heading and the body. So that is saved from here. Now, if you are on a PC, you're lucky because you can do that right away from that pop-up. But if you're on a Mac like myself, then you do need to do some extra customization. So now you know how to pick a safe font or how to work with some of the customized fonts, and you also know how to customize them on a PC, on a Mac. But there's one thing else I wanted to talk about, and that's the default font size. So if you're creating a template like I'm working with right now for an online course, it's okay to use some of the default font sizing. For example, if you go into the standard presentation, you're going to notice that PowerPoint usually starts with 44 at the top and 28 at the body. That's great if you're working for an online presentation, but if you're working and you're creating a presentation that's going to be shown in a bigger meeting room where there could be some people all the way back sitting in the back, then I would recommend you up the title font and the body font to something between 44 and 60. And also if you're working at a large auditorium, for example, some of the conferences could have thousands of people in that room, you don't want to be using small fonts. That's where you would set the template and you would want to make it bigger. So that's another thing that you could set right here. When you're working on the first slide, you can, if you wanted to, or you can do that on the subsequent slides. Because as you recall, that first slide does not appear for you on the front end. This really just dictates the basics. So for example, if you wanted to create a title with a much bigger font, that's where you can start customizing them one at a time. So congratulations, now you know more about fonts and how to help yourself, your teams, and your clients, regardless if they're working on a PC or on a Mac. Now our next step is to start working on the default color palette. So we're going to learn how to choose and add the right default color combination to your template. Now, working with colors works a lot like fonts. If you remember with fonts, we talked about how you need to change the theme and you need to avoid manual formatting, because if I click here and pick a manual font, it's going to break from the theme. And it's the same with the colors. When you start a presentation template, many people make that mistake where they go on the starting slide, they pick on the first font, and then they go in here and they start picking their own color. They avoid the theme. Now, you notice the theme is the top. We've got this is the theme colors that are part of the presentation. They might look at them and they say, you know what, I don't want any of these colors. I want to use pink. That's my template. And so they pick that and they think that now they've updated the template. But that's going to create some conflicts because that pink is not really part of the theme. So if I click here on the slide master and I click on the colors, and let's say I change my mind and I want to use the green. If I click on it, you'll notice that that pink is not changing because PowerPoint is not recognizing it as being part of the theme. So if I wanted to make that pink, then I need to not change it from here manually. I need to go and customize that theme. So I'm going to go back in here and make that black again, and I'm going to go into Slide Master. I'm going to click Customize, and now I would click on here and change some of these colors. If I wanted it to be pink instead of green, I would click on here and locate the pink and change it. And if I do that, you'll notice that this color has changed. So now before I change the colors and save it and give it a name, I need to understand the hierarchy. How does PowerPoint deal with these names? And why is there at the top does it say text and background, and at the bottom it says accent and it says hyperlink? So how does this work? To explain that, I created this slide for you. Let me show you the hierarchy so that you can pick your colors strategically. So by default, the first four are text, and it says dark, text background. You'll see it dark, light, dark, light. So the way it works is PowerPoint makes the first one as white and black, and these colors control the primary text. So anytime you create the first text, usually PowerPoint is going to go and pick one of these two colors. Now PowerPoint gives us an option. Let's say you don't want the black, you want an alternate dark background. In my case, it's a navy. I can change it. So I've created an alternate rather than black and white. I created navy and white. I can make it navy and light gray, navy and light blue. There's many things I can do with the second one. But let me show you now what happens in some of the features, and that will help you decide how to pick these colors. Now, the first thing you need to know is that white and black affect the text. They also affect the text on charts. So for example, I have here a chart that I created. I created a brand new slide and I said slide new, and then I picked a chart and I created a chart. So notice what ends up happening is by default, PowerPoint has the labels in that gray. If I click on it and I go to the color, notice that PowerPoint is going to the black and it's picking that second gray color. Now, I don't know why, but by default, that's what PowerPoint does. So if I change this color and I make it yellow or pink, then what's going to happen? My charts are also going to become yellow and pink with the secondary color. So it's going to create a little bit more work if I have a lot of charts to work for. So that's why I always recommend keep the first two as black and white unless you really have to change them. The second ones as well, I recommend you pick your color strategically, mainly because that color is also affecting the background. So let me show you in this template how that would work and how PowerPoint works with background. So if I go into the slide master of this particular file, you're going to notice that I have some slides that are white and some slides that are dark. So the way you would work with this, for example, if I have the light and I click on the text, notice that PowerPoint is picking now this navy. Well, what if I want to create an alternate version of this slide, but I want it to be dark and I wanted white text on dark? And sometimes I do like to do that. For example, notice what I've done here with the section breaks. I like that. You might have recognized the slide. I've used it before on my presentation. I also have it in a white format. So let's say I want to make this one into a dark format. So I'm going to duplicate it, and PowerPoint gives me an easy option. I can click here on Slide Master. I can click on Background, and if I pick the navy, which is part of my template, notice what happens. Everything now updated. My text became white and the background became navy. All I have to do right now is just change the footer, because you notice the footer, it was picking up the darker color. So I can just go to the footer in here now, and rather than picking some, I could probably pick a lighter gray and it'll work. And now I have a darker version of the slide. So I can click, rename it, and rather than number 1, I can keep it as title and content, which is what PowerPoint uses, and I'll just call it dark and rename. So this is an option of why when you're working with that template, the color palette, you need to keep that in mind. Another option people use, maybe they might not like, some of my clients as well, maybe they don't want the dark and light in one template. What I usually do is I create a light version and then I click here and duplicate, and on the same file I might create a dark version for them. So for example, I can go in here dark, and notice how most of them have updated automatically. Of course, I might have to do some minor tweaks, but now I have a light and dark version. And the way that I would access that is from the front end. So for example, if I'm here, you'll notice I've got the light template and I have the dark one. Now this seems a lot, and I don't want that specifically for my file, but I just wanted to show you how that controls your colors. So I'm going to go back into my slide here, and I'm going to delete the dark one. Now, a second thing that you want to keep in mind when you're working with colors is that the accent colors, the one that follow, impact what happens on the charts as well, and your diagrams. Anytime you're creating some of the smart artwork or some of the chart, by default, when you start, PowerPoint is going to start coloring things in order. For example, if you look here at the preview, you'll notice that PowerPoint is picking the light blue, the darker blue, and the navy as well. So now you see why I have my navy twice. Why would I have navy here and I would have navy a second time in the accent? That's because I want that by default. When I start a chart, I want PowerPoint to show these colors and I want navy to be part of them. And so if I did not include it in the accent, then it would not be showing up on my chart. It might be some other color. So that's why in my case, my palette has that navy twice and I have that white twice. So now when you go back to work on your presentation, let me get back to that first one, which is the blank one. You get to customize that color to fit your own brand. So if you have a brand color, for example, if we go to this presentation here that I did for my previous client, you'll notice that on the brand style guide, I gave them various colors. The Pantone is if they're going to a commercial press, usually you would want to do your logo or any embroidery with a specific Pantone. If you're designing for the screen, usually an RGB color would be working. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. So usually it's a sequence of 3 numbers, or I would recommend you use the hex color, which is a web safe color. So in this case, I'm going to pick the hex color and I'm going to copy it. So if let's say we're customizing this for them, I would click on the color, customize. I would choose my background colors, and let's say you click on the accent, you would put that hex color here, and now I know that if I click away, I've got that burgundy from the brand. And now I get to pick the subsequent colors. So that's how you do it one by one. You pick your backgrounds, your accent colors. Now, something else I wanted to mention about the hyperlink, you'll notice that there's the hyperlink in green and the hyperlink followed in a different colors. I personally like to keep all my hyperlink blues for my templates and for my clients because universally hyperlinks are known as blue, but it also depends on the brand and the application and how your client or yourself plan to use the file. And if you don't want it to show a different color for the hyperlink, I usually like to keep them the same. So I would click on the picker, and now what happens is the hyperlink and the followed are the same colors. So that's how you'd customize it. Now you'd give it a name. Let me just call it testing so you can see how that would work. If I call it testing and save, now we're going to go back to that theme folder. If you remember that theme folder, so if you want to share that theme with your client, you can just click here on the theme colors. And if I scroll down on the custom, I'm going to find the testing here somewhere. There it is. I've got the testing now. I don't have to edit it, but I just wanted to show you if you need to share the color schemes you've created with your clients, that's where you would do that. So in this case, I'm just going to delete it because it was a test. And now you know how to work with colors better than most people do. So now, in addition to setting the font and color themes, there's an extra step that you can do that could save you time, and that is creating some default settings. So let me show you what I mean. If I'm now in a brand new presentation and I've clicked the layout that says title only. So let's say I wanted to create an infographic in here. And I wanted to start creating some shape and text. So the way I would do that is I would probably click on some of the shapes. Let's say I wanted to start with a circle. I can put that here. And then I wanted to click and start adding some labels. So let's say this is a label here that I want to do. So by default, you'll notice that the text box, it's showing it's a body. So that's why it's always important to be using that either body or heading. I would recommend to make sure that every time you click on a text box, you make sure it has the body tag. If you're using some other kind of font, because some templates do have that, whoever set up that file might have set it up not properly. Maybe they decided to do Arial and now you're going to be creating yourself some conflict. So pick the body font, make sure that you have that. And let's say this is too small. What if I wanted to make that a little bit bigger? Because by default, 18 is the starting point. Let's say I want my labels to be 24, and I want my labels to be that navy, not black, because by default, PowerPoint is going to pick the black. So I'm going to make that as my setting. Now, to save time, I want to make this as the default. So what I would do is I would right click on it, and I'm going to click Save as Default. Actually, let me move it to the top so you can see it, because on my screen it's not showing that well. Right click and you'll notice there's an option here, set as default text box. Now if I do that, every time I click on a new text box, you're going to notice that now it's got that navy. If I click on it, it's got the navy and it's got 24 and body. So this is going to save me time every time I'm creating infographics. Now, what about this shape? By default, every time you create a shape in PowerPoint, it's going to start with the primary color, the accent. So you'll notice, remember, these were the backgrounds and text, and this was our first accent color. So usually PowerPoint is going to go to that accent color and use that color. You know, it's nice. That's why I recommend you always put your brand color here. Usually that first accent color needs to be the brand color that might apply for different diagrams. Well, what if I don't want my diagrams to start with blue? Maybe I want them to start with navy as well. So let's say I pick the navy. I want that to be the starting point. And what if I don't want my shape to have an outline? So I'm going to remove the outline. And what if I want my infographics to have a bit of a customization? Maybe I want it to have a bit of a shadow, kind of like some of these presets, or I can create my own preset. So let me just pick this one here. Right now, you'll notice it's got a gradient. It's got a bit of a shadow, and I can write sample text in here. What if I want the sample text to also be a little bit bigger? I can do that as well now. Let's say I want it to be 20. And when I'm happy with that shape, I can right click on it and say set as default shape. So now every time I create a new shape, I'm going to have that as the default. So you can choose that and create it strategically, or you can keep the basics. It's up to you and up to the client. Try to ask your clients how they plan to use it. If you think this will save them time, then by all means do set it, because these settings will translate to whoever opens the file. These default settings are going to be in place. Well, now that you know more about color, fonts, and the master slide layouts than most people do, you are ready to start working on these slide layouts. So in this segment, I'm going to show you how to create custom slide layouts that fit your presentation delivery system. Now, if you recall, when we started the starter presentation, PowerPoint comes in with some standard slides. These are the ones that are in the navy blue. So when I show you now, this is the starter presentation, you'll notice that we have the master slide. Now, this one is not usable. This is more to control the look and feel of the rest of them. What you really can use in your presentations are the title, the content, the section break. You'll see the two content here, and some of these basic slides that we're going to customize. Now, in addition to that, I usually like to create some additional layouts, and these are the ones with the 3 content, 3 columns, some ones for the infographics that I'll show you, and also some ones with image placeholders, with the right, left image placeholders, some numbered lists, some testimonials, and questions. So let me show you what my template looks like, and I'm going to walk you through how I've created some of these slides. So let's take a look behind the scenes at the template that I'm using for this particular presentation for the PowerPoint template masterclass. So if I go into View, Master, Slide Master, you're going to be able to see now the template that I have in place. You'll notice that I've customized the primary main master layout. So it's got the 5 elements, but I customized it with my color and my font, and I added this accent here with the triangle and my icon. Then I'm using the standard title. So for example, if I right click, you're going to notice that this is the same title that came with PowerPoint, where it says title slide. And I've created some alternate cover pages with some image placeholders, one that has a place for adding numbers in case I'm doing a course with module 1, module 2, the custom cover that I created for this particular course. And this is a standard one from PowerPoint, another standard 2 column. You can see that it's the standard, but I customized it to fit my needs. This is the one that I always create because I do use that 3 column format. So this is something unique to my presentations. This layout I do use on a regular basis. So I kept it where I've got a title and some content, and I leave the space to add custom infographics. This is the standard title that comes with PowerPoint. This is something I created myself. I like to have that title and subtitle and a space below to create my infographics. This is the typical section header that comes with PowerPoint. So this is not something I created. It's the one with PowerPoint, but notice that it's simplified. I've kept it in case I need it, but in general, I do like to alternate and make my section breaks a little bit darker. So I create that visual interest with the contrast. If the content is white, then the section breaks would be dark. If the content is dark, I like the section breaks to be light. Then you might recognize this slide. This is the one that came by default from PowerPoint, but I customized it to fit my template. Now, these are custom ones with image placeholders that are new and specific to my template, so I'll show you how they work on the front end. This is new to my templates as well. I like these numbered slides, which you have seen already. This basic and simple slide comes in handy when I'm doing webinars or video sales presentations where I have to move slides quickly. You know, those slides that are moving as a video and you've got some words that are matching the narration and some of the music. So usually I do I do use this content. It just has the title. So if you notice here, it's actually using the title setting. And you can see here it's the heading. So anytime I'm switching slides, I have to be aware of which one is using a title and a heading and which one is using a body. Keep that hierarchy in place as you're building your slides because it's going to make your life easier as you format the slides. So I'll show you on the front end what I mean by that. This is another layout that I use where it's an image in the background and I sometimes need that simple light text on it. Of course, the blank that comes from PowerPoint. These questions come in handy when I have a webinar and I need to add a question and I don't have an image, so it makes my formatting easier. This is when I have some custom testimonials or I just want to share a quote that's inspirational in my content. I use this format. You can notice once again, I've got a light and dark version of it and some ending slides. Now, you might have seen this one with the video that I've used on this particular course. So you can create that as well. And I've got my endings. Now, these are the ones that came from PowerPoint that I personally don't use. So I tend to put them towards the bottom so they're out of the way, but they're in place in case someone else needs them. So how would this work now on the front end? So if I go on the front end, you'll notice that I've got this cover. So if I duplicate it, now notice how the power of a template. If I click in here and I switch title, notice how things have formatted. Now this manual formatting did not change. So if I just click on reset, now I've reset it to match the template. What if I want a custom image? I can just click on here, and right now I've got this slide. You can see how everything is matching up because I paid attention to making sure that I've got the title and I've got the content. And this would also work if I switch to that infographic style. Remember that custom slide that I created? Or it'll also work if I switch to some of the section breaks. So you can see here, because I've got that customization, anything that has a title and a text below is going to snap in place. Now, it's probably not going to work with one that just has just a title, because then PowerPoint is not going to know what to do with this other section. So this would not be a good switch, because you notice that this is now not fitting with the template. Now, many people do that mistake and they start keeping keeping text boxes and forcing them on there. It's okay if you do a bit of manual formatting, but if you've got hundreds of slides, then you need to try to really create slide layouts that fit your content. So right away, you can see here, I've got that image that goes on the left, and the content, I can start adding more content. If I think the image does not work properly, I need it to be on the right, then I've got all these layouts. So that's the power of the template, and I wanted to show you now some samples. So if I go into the template here, let me just show you the ease of use as well with some of the images. So I'm going to go into the template. So you can see here in my template, so this is not the course, I've got some of these sample slides. You can see how they would look if I switch them around. And then I have a section on how to use this template. So if someone is brand new to it and they don't know how to use it, I've got a style guide that they can follow with my brand colors. I've got my logo, how to use that logo, how to use it on specific backgrounds, what's the font. So you can see that's when you're sharing a template, it's got that style guide in it, and then some sample layouts. So I want to show people some of the layouts that they can be using with it. And now you can see some of that centered text that I do like to use sometimes. And then I can alternate quickly. So for example, you can see here, because they are using that title format, they immediately update. For this one here, you can notice because it's using the proper placeholders, if I switch right away, that template is going to switch. If I think this image might work better on the left, then I can switch it. In some cases, for example, this guy is facing this way, this layout works better, because if I choose the other layout, it's going to look odd. He's going to look like he's looking outside the screen. So that's where you get to decide how to use your image placeholders, and you decide on the layout. And now you know why I create some variations for these slides. And now you can see this is the one with the image background, and that's the one here with the image background and white text. So these come in handy when I have some webinars, or I just want to highlight one word, some of the section breaks. And then I show layouts of how to use some of the basic layouts, when to use the content, when to use that infographic one that I've used. So you can see that's when you're providing a template, you need to provide samples and show your clients how they can use that template. And you can also need to create these slide layouts. For example, let's take a look and see this layout does have a bit of manual formatting. And you'll see it's this is the one that I've used. Now, many templates that I've bought and they have this particular layout, they make the mistake of not using the right template, but they just give you one image placeholder. And that's not a template. A template is the one that snaps the title and the content in place and gives you the flexibility to add specific images and graphics on the side. And you can see here, this is my quote that I have this layout. And if I switch to the dark, notice what happens. It switches. And this logo here, now I'll have to make it lighter. So I'm going to ungroup. I'll show you in the next section how to do that. I'm going to convert this to a graphic, and I'm going to go in here and recolor it. So let me just see if I think I have to move it here to get that color, and I can make it white, and notice that's how it would work. So I'll show you that in the next segment on how to import graphics the right way. Then I've got this layout with the Q&A, and I have these questions. Notice how they come in handy if I have a webinar. So now you can see the power of having a template, and that's how a template would work. It's not image placeholders. A template is really text placeholders that allows you to format slides with ease. So let's get started now and customize a brand new template. I'm going to go here into presentation, brand new, and I'm going to walk you step by step on how I created some of these custom slides for my particular presentation. All right, so step one is to go into View, Master, Slide Master. And if you recall, our first step is to pick the font. In my case, I already have that font family in place. And then to pick the color, in my case, I already have that color palette in place. So I've picked them, and the next step would be to start customizing this first slide. So I usually like to have that as bold, and 44 works fine for my case. I feel that because I'm using an online application, but if you're creating a presentation for a larger conference room, you might want to make that a bit larger, or if you're definitely if it's going into a large auditorium, you want to reconsider the size of the fonts on here. In my case, that's fine. I'm just going to pick the navy. I do like having my fonts at navy. The next step I usually fix is the paragraph style. Now, by default, PowerPoint starts with that multiple multiple line spacing at 0.9, which means 90% line height. It might work for some fonts. For other, I find it looks squished. So I'm going to go with single because I'm using a web font, and web fonts usually work with 100% rather than 90% height. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do the same thing for the main content, the paragraph as well. I'm going to make that as well single, not multiple. So that's fixed. Now, I like my first line on any content not to be a bullet because I don't want my presentations to be full of bullets, and then I use a bullet when I want to. So I'm going to remove that bullet. 28 is a good size in my case. Now the other ones, I do prefer to have them at 24. I don't like the cascading smaller sizes. So now that I've got my paragraph in place, I want to adjust the paragraph spacing. So I want that every time I add a new paragraph to have a little bit more spacing before that. So I'm going to make that 16. I find that sometimes works well in my case. For the other levels, because they're bullets underneath the main paragraph, I'm okay if there's a little bit less spacing. So I'm going to right click in here and see. 5 top spacing is fine. So I'm going to leave that as is. So I've got my spacing in place. Now I want to work on the bullets. So the first thing I would do is I would click on all of them and change the color of the bullets. I want my bullets to be my brand color, which is the blue. So that would be the color of the bullets. Now these levels, now there's a bit of space here. So I want this level to start right below the main paragraph every time someone is starting that. To do that, you would do that here from the ruler. So if you can't see the ruler, just click on View and you'll find that you have the ruler here. And if you prefer to work with guides, so you can also use guides. But I'm okay without them, but let me just show you in case you do want to use guides. For example, you want to make sure your content lines up to the bottom. You can always just use that guide here. And if you put that guide, you'll notice that the other slides will have it. So that way, when you're creating subsequent slides, you'll make sure not to go below that border. So that's how guides would come in handy. In my case, I don't usually use them, so I'm just going to remove that out of the way. I'm going to go View. I'm going to hide the guides. And so now that we have the ruler, let's get back and fix these bullets. So I'm going to click at each level. I'm going to drag that first triangle. And if I slide it here towards the front, you'll notice that the bullet has moved. And I'm going to adjust the second level. So now I want this one to line up with the first line. So now this seems like a lot of work, but really if you set all of these presets on the first slide, you're going to save yourself so much time and effort on the subsequent slides. And that's what I like about PowerPoint over Keynote, because Keynote, you don't have that primary slide. So you have to go apply the slides to each slide one at a time, whereas PowerPoint saves you time. So now in this particular case, the bullet is still there, but I hid it. But if someone is on the front end using it, so you'll notice that the first bullet is a circle. So I want to make my second bullet to be a dash. That way, so we can alternate and go from circle to dash. Of course, you can pick any kind of bullet you want. So I'm just going to go here so I can show you that you've got so many different bullets. I would suggest keeping it simple, knowing that this file could be opened by someone else. So I'm just going to make that as a dash, then circle, dash, circle, and then I'm going to make that as a dash again. So I'm going to pick that dash. So I think I've got a good hierarchy. I've fixed my paragraph. I've fixed the lineup of the bullets and everything in place. Now my next step is to make the best use out of the layout on the slide. So over the years, I've identified a size that works for me. So I'm going to click here on Format Object, and I'm going to click on the size. I like my content to take up most of the space, so I'm going to make it 12.33 inches. The reason for that is because the slide width is 13.33. So if I make my content 12.33, you'll notice now you can see how it's showing that the left margin is 0.5 inches and the right margin would be 0.5. So I think this is a good layout in my case. The way to set the size for your particular presentation, just go into the page setup and find out what's the size of your screen. I'm using the default widescreen, so you'll notice that the width in North America we use inches, so it's 13.33. If you're anywhere else in the world, this will be centimeters. So pick something that works reasonable and gives you some kind of a reasonable margin without taking up too much space. The next thing I want to do is set the space for my page numbers. So I like my page number to be on the right. Now, of course, for some clients, I might highlight the page number more. I might give it a bit design. But in my case, I want to have the ability to switch them on and off, and I'll show you how to do that on subsequent slides and also from the front end. Now, the date I don't need, but I'll keep it just in case it comes in handy in the future, or I'm merging with slides that have a date, so they need a place to snap in place. So I've got my footer. I want my footer to be left aligned. So let me just go in here, make that left aligned. So I've got my footer. This would be used for any kind of copyright or any kind of legal text. And I'm going to make this 10. So in my case, I feel this works fine for my layout. Now the next step is I want to go and add that accent. So let me show you how I would go about doing that. Okay, so to add some space for the accent on the side, I'm going to make this around 11 inches wide. So let me just go make that there. I can see it, it's around 11 inches wide. And now I want to go and draw a triangle. So the triangle that I'm using in the corner. So I'm just going to create a triangle and I'm going to flip it around because I want it to snap in the corner and adjust it. So this is if you're doing the same thing, you would customize it for the colors, and I'm going to remove the border. I don't need a border. Now for the color, if you recall, I wanted to alternate between the dark and the white. So I want to make sure that I'm picking this white and not this white, because if I pick this white and if I switch the background, PowerPoint is going to make it black, and I don't want it to be black. I want PowerPoint to know that if I pick this white, then if I do the switch background, it's going to make it dark navy. So that's what I've done here, and now I can start customizing the shadow. So I'm going to go to save time, I'm going to get it from the other presentation. So I'm going to put that in here and I'll show you how that works. So I've got that shape here. I'm going to click on it right now because I can't remember the settings. So let me see. I'm going to copy the settings. So I'm going to click here on the clipboard copy formatting. And if I go and click on this triangle, you'll notice it got that formatting in place. So I'm going to save myself time because I can't remember how I did. It took me a bit of time to pick a shadow, but the way you would do that is you would click here on the shadow and start experimenting with the color and the size and find something that works with the style you want. So I'm going to remove this one here and I'm going to put this icon. I'll show you in the next segment how to import icons the right way, but for now we want to go up for speed. So I'm going to just make sure it fits. And now you'll notice what ends up happening, that I've got the core components on the first master slide. Now notice how every other slide has them in place. And notice how the title here, even though, because I made this 11 width, notice how these titles are picking up what happened here. And now you understand why I say never delete anything from the first slide, because I see so many templates that are not there and people just create so much manual formatting for themselves. And that's where the snap here, you can see if I make a mistake with that title, if I try to resize it and it's not the right size, all I have to do is hide and show again, and you'll notice how PowerPoint is snapping it into place. And the same thing with the footer. You'll notice it's working now. It's not jamming because I have not deleted anything. So the cover, we'll get to that later. I'll show you how to import the logo and the image placeholders. Let's work first on the content. So the main content, that looks fine. I'm not going to change anything. This is the one that matches the first one. So that looks fine. This is going to be the section break. So this one, I usually like to fix it as well. So I'm going to keep it right now just like this, and I'll get back to it in the next segment. The 2-column. Now you notice how the 2-column is fine, but I just have to adjust the boxes now to fit my new layout. That's all I have to do. I just want to make sure that the left and right are the same size. You'll notice how PowerPoint is letting me know that the left and right are the same size, and the margins on the left and right are the same by using these red arrows. So it's very easy to snap things into place. Now that page number is a bit more towards the right, because you'll notice I want that number to be right here, because if I move it a bit closer, then there's going to be too much space on this edge. So you get to decide where you put things, but now you know why I have my particular place. Now the next thing I need to create is that 3-column layout. So I'm going to duplicate the 2-column. So now that I have a duplicate, I'm going to resize these so that I can create a 3-column format. So I already know that the width 4 inches would work well. So I'm going to move this one over as well, and I'm going to make 4 inches. So I've got now 2 that are 4 inches. Now there's another way I can add a third box, is I can click on this one and do a copy and paste. So then I've got a third one. That could be an option, or I could go in here into Slide Master and choose one of the placeholders. So I'm going to click here on Insert Placeholder, get the content, then I can click and just draw one that matches in here, and then I can now, if I start clicking and dragging, you'll notice that PowerPoint is going to start giving me suggestions. So I want this to be around 4, and so that means I have to move them slightly towards the edge. Yeah, there we go, because I want the left and right to be the same. And so now I've got my 3 columns. Now, if you're not sure on the spacing, if it looks like this, there's more room here than there's here, I'm going to click on the Arrange. So let me just show you how that would work. I'm going to click Arrange, and then I'm going to click Align, Distribute Horizontally. You'll notice that now they are in the right space. Now, something else I might want to do is make the font on the 3 columns smaller, because starting at 28 might be too much on a 2-column. So I'm just going to click on all these 3, and I'm going to make my font smaller. So there it is. Now you can see that it's starting at 24 and the second level's at 20. So I find that that works well. So I've got my 2-column, 3-column. Now I want to rename this. I'm going to click here, rename it. And I'm going to call it 3-column. So this is the layout that I use. The comparison layout, I don't use that much, but I'm just going to clean it out either way, just in case it does come in handy when I'm merging presentations. So once again, I'm using the left and right is the same. You'll notice it's snapping now, telling me the edges are the same. So for now, I'm just going to keep it like that to keep the left and the right the same. That's about right, even though it's not 100% accurate on this level, but it should be fine for now. The title slide I'm going to keep as is, but I wanted to create the second one. So as you can see here, I've already created it, but I want to show you how I would do that. So I'm going to right click on the single title. I'm going to right click in here, and you'll notice that I've got my title in place, but I want to resize it. I want that to be centered. So I'm going to move it here to the center. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So there's a bit of manual formatting, but PowerPoint still knows that this is a title. So when I do move things around, PowerPoint is going to understand that this is my title. So there's a way now, if I'm not sure if this is centered or not, because I'm trying to center it, but it doesn't seem that PowerPoint is snapping in the right place. There we go. Now it's snapping in the right place. So I know that this is center. I'm going to move it up to the top. And I want to create a second text box below, because this is the heading. And instead of using the content, because notice that the content has tables, charts, I don't want that. I just want simple text. So I'm going to click on the Insert Placeholder, and I'm going to pick text. That's all I want. I want text, and I'm going to add it right below this title. So this is going to be my new text subtitle area. Notice how PowerPoint immediately picked up the formatting I had here. So now you understand why we always start by creating the formatting and the hierarchy here, because that's how PowerPoint plays with things. So now I'm going to delete the bullets, because I don't want bullets on my secondary title. And I'm going to make this centered, and I'm going to make this text box smaller. So now I've got a style that allows me to create infographics. So I've got a heading, and I've got a subheading, and I have lots of room to create custom infographics. So right now I'm going to go right click and rename the slide, and I'm going to call it, instead of title only 1, because the title only was the one above it, I'm going to call it titled centered. So now I've got these 2 layouts that I use a lot, and they're in the right place. Blank is fine. Now these are the ones that come with PowerPoint by default, so I'm going to keep them. and I'm just going to give them a bit of a cleanup. So in this particular case, I want it to fit the layout of my template. So I'm just going to snap it like that. Now this font is too small considering my style, so I'm going to start it with 28. Just like you'll notice that PowerPoint did not pick on that because it's not a text box. It's not a content box. It's a standard text box. So, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So I think this works better for my formatting, and I'm just going to clean it up. Now, I don't want people on my team or myself to use this for content. You'll notice that it says click to edit master text styles. I don't want that. I want this layout only to be used if I have a chart on the side and some content in place. So I'm going to make this easier for the front end. I'm going to remove this and say, instead of click to edit master text, I'm going to say click to add charts or tables, because that's the only reason I want anyone to use the slide layout. So you can notice it's right here, and that will be the formatting. Now this is the image placeholder that I don't necessarily use, but I'm just gonna either way clean it up in case I'm merging, and in case it does come in handy for some applications. Once again, I'm gonna make that 28, and this one's gonna be the 36. And for the image as well, I'm going to resize it to fit the formatting. You'll see that this layout will not work on my template. That's because I got this this triangle at the top. So if I just put an image on top of it, this layout will not work for my template, but I'm just keeping it anyway, just in case it comes in handy for future applications. Or if I really need it, what I can do is I can click on the format background, and I'm going to say hide background. So you'll notice if I hide the background, notice what happens to that triangle here. So I'm going to hide it. So in case I do need it, it's in place, but ideally it's not something I want to use as well. And this one here with the charts, I'm going to keep it because most charts would not necessarily reach the edge. If it does, I can always hide the background on the front end. So now you see we've got the basic content in place. Next thing, I want to show you how to import graphics the right way, how to import your logo, and how to customize image placeholders so we can create some fancy cover pages, and that we can create some fancy image placeholder slides. So our next step into creating image placeholders and graphic is to learn how to deal with graphics in PowerPoint, how to create, import, and edit graphics. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this section. So before I dive more into the graphics, I wanted to talk about how to import your logo. Now notice this logo is animating. So I have it animating one letter at a time. And the reason I can do that is because this logo was imported as an SVG. I broke it apart into PowerPoint, and I was able to convert it to a graphics and then edit it. I'm able to animate it. I'm able to make it any color I want. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But before that, I wanted to show you what most people do now. Anytime somebody is importing a logo into their PowerPoint template, most likely they might end up bringing a JPEG, because most people know how to work with a JPEG. Everyone has a camera these days, and anytime you take a picture, most likely the extension is JPEG. But the issue with JPEG is, as you can notice, it always has a background. So if you put your logo on a white, it might look okay, but then if you try to put it on any other color, you're going to end up with that box, which doesn't look that great, especially if you're creating a template and it's your own brand. If you're showing somebody else's logo on your slides, it might be understandable. But if it's your template, then you better have a really great logo. Another issue with JPEG is every time you save the file, and which you might save the file over 100 times while you're working on it, JPEG images start losing quality. So it's not a great ideal, but if you have no other options, that might be the only thing. The next best thing is to import your logo as a PNG. Now, a PNG is great because it's in many cases transparent. So no matter what color background you put it on, it's going to look great. Now you can see in this case, it looks great on white, but when you put it on any other color, well, I can't read this logo anymore because I cannot recolor it. But in SVG, which is a scalable vector graphic, I can convert that in PowerPoint, I can edit it, I can change its color, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, vector graphics come in many formats. They come as a .ai, they come in as a .eps file, they can come in as a PDF, but you cannot edit them in PowerPoint. The only file you can edit in PowerPoint is if you import as an SVG, convert it, and then edit it. So let me show you how that would work. All right, so let's go back to our presentation under the Slide Master, and we're going to import the logo and put it on the cover slide. So I'm going to move this here to the edge, and I'm going to move it to the left, and we'll figure out the size and the fonts later. For now, I want to bring the logo. Actually, let me just move it over so I can show you a bit more about the logo. So I've got here the logo in various formats. You'll notice that usually logos, vector logos, so we decided that we're not going to be using JPEG and no PNG. We need to be using a vector logo. Usually that's an Illustrator file format. So let me show you the difference, what happens. If you bring in Illustrator, now PowerPoint understands that file format, but if I try to recolor or break that apart, it's not going to let me. If I go into group, ungroup, PowerPoint isn't understanding it still as an image. And if I click on the color and I try to recolor it, notice what happens. If let's say if I make it red, notice that the background becomes red, but I cannot edit that logo. So the AI format is not right. What about EPS? Many of the logos come as EPS. So you'll notice once again, if I go into the EPS, if I say fill and I pick a red color, once again, it's not letting me break it apart. Just change picture. PowerPoint seems to read that as a picture. Now the same thing with the PDF, because PDF is sometimes used on a keynote. So let's just try it once again to make sure. I want to even prove for myself what happens here. So if I recolor it, the same thing. You'll notice that it thinks of it as a picture. Now the only file format that allows you to convert is that SVG. Now you see why I'm telling you to bring it in as an SVG. So I'm going to bring in that logo as an SVG. Now notice what I can do. If I want to recolor that logo, I can click on it here. Let me just click. If I make it all blue, notice that now I can recolor that logo to anything I want. So that's the power of an SVG. And there's another format if I want to break it apart and animate it. Now the group might not work, but if I convert to shape, you'll notice that this is the only file format that PowerPoint allows me to convert to shape. Notice what happens now. Now I've got these elements in place. So if I wanted this icon, I can copy it and now group it. So I can group that and use that as the top corner. Now you know how I got my icon. And then this logo here, I can animate if I want, or I can regroup. So I can just regroup it. And now I've got this format in case I need to have it as white on the darker slides, I'm able to edit. So now you can see why I like to import everything as a vector. Now, if you want to lock it back in and you don't want it to be editable as a graphic, you can do that. You can just go in here and cut, and then you can do edit, paste special, and notice that PowerPoint lets you paste it as a PNG. If you wanted to do that, it's up to you. If you fixed it and you created a white and dark version and you want to lock it in, you can do that. If you wanted to save it back as an SVG, you can, or if you can keep it as a Microsoft Office graphic. So in this case, let me just bring it back to SVG so that I can lock it in place. And now I can resize it and start formatting my cover slide. All right, so I put the logo in place and I put the header and the subheader in the right location to match somewhat what we had on this slide. But now how do we go about to create this shape and the placeholder and have another here image placeholder when at the top we've got this icon? So to remove this icon, for the first thing I need to do to create that space is I need to click on hide background. Now notice by hiding that background, I've taken out that icon without really affecting the slide here or without having to create white boxes, because that's what sometimes people do. Because if I create white boxes to hide it and I start changing the background color, then I'm going to face some issues. So that's why I need to make sure that my slides are as clean as possible. Now, the next thing you might ask yourself is, do I need that footer on the cover slide? Because you do have that option. You can just hide and show. For example, if you go at the top slide and you look at the main components, we've got those 5. We've got the title, date, footer, page, and text. But if you go to the subsequent slides, you only have the title and footer to show. So that's why you've got these 2 placeholders in place. So I would say keep it, even though in most cases people might not need it, because if you take it out, let me show you. If I hide it and go into the normal view and somebody is working on this presentation and they say insert header and footer, and now they click, they want a footer and they want a slide number. Let's say they want that. In most cases, they don't need a date. So I'm going to say Magnas media and they say apply, it's not going to work. And so that's why people get frustrated and they start adding manual pages and they think, why isn't this working? So I would highly recommend is you go back to the slide master, keep that footer on, and let users decide when they go into normal view, do they want a header or footer? So if they go now and say insert header and footer, and they pick a slide number and a footer, they can do that here. Media, and they say apply, you can see now it applies. So now you see it, why I say try not to delete anything, try to keep the main components into place, because if you want to avoid future conflict. So let's go about now creating that shape. We've got that space, now we need to create that icon placeholder and the image placeholder. So before to do that, I wanted to show you that there's a little bit of a gap here between that icon placeholder and the image. And why do I have that? That's because of the hierarchy that PowerPoint works when you're adding images. So let me just copy these as a sample, and I'm going to take them to my starter presentation here. And I'm going to show you how to create these image placeholder, and we're going to use this as a place, and then I'll take it to the cover. But I do need a place for room to show you how it's done. So let's start by creating this shape, and I'm going to show you what ends up happening with PowerPoint if you don't create that gap. So I'm going to create, first of all, this shape to match what we have here. I'm going to readjust the corners so that they fit the right sides, and I'm going to flip it at 45 degrees. Let me see. Now we've got that. Let me try to match the shape. Let me see. Is it going to snap? It's not snapping. So let me just put it on top. Make sure I have the exact shape. So I have the exact shape. Now I don't want any outline, so I'm going to remove that outline. And if I wanted that gradient, so the way I did that was I chose one of these gradients and then I customized it to fit my needs. So for now, I'm not going to add any gradients for this because I'm still using it to create shapes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste. Let me just do paste now. I've got another shape and I want to get that shape of the image placeholder. So let me just click that here. I think that's about right. So I've got my image placeholders. So now I want to overlap them and create my image placeholder. So let me make it another color so you can see. So in PowerPoint, if I make this an image placeholder and I've got this shape, by default, even if I, in the back end, even if I go in here and say bring to front, when I take it to the front and add a picture, somehow PowerPoint always gives priority to the picture, so it ends up putting the picture on top. And I don't want that, because if the picture is on top, it's going to end up cropping that box for me, and I want people to see that full box. So I have to create this cropped here, where you can see it, there's a white gap. So to do that, I'm just going to copy the shape, and I'm going to create a white box. So let me just go here into the home and give it a color of a white so that I can see it. And I'm going to put this blue at the top, bring that to front. So now I'm going to reshape that white to create the sizing that I want, the crop shape. You can see here I'm trying to make it fit. I think it's about as close as the other one. Let me just bring it up a little bit to the front. So if I'm not sure, I can always use the arrange and align center. So I'm going to align center and align middle. So now I know they're in the right place. So that looks almost the same as this one, slightly different, but for now, just for the sake of this example, actually, let me just bring it up a little bit to the front. It's snapping. So now I've got this shape and I've got the white border and I've got the blue, but I don't want to keep that white. I actually need to crop it manually. So I'm going to click on these shapes. I'm going to click on the white and the red shape, and I'm going to go into shape format. And then I'm going to click here on merge shapes and say fragment. Now that I fragmented it, let me just recolor them so I can see them. I'm going to go delete those fragmented pieces. You're going to notice now I have that white space. So now I can take the shape and go over to the cover and create the gradients and add an image placeholder and a set image. So let me just take these up to the top. Actually, I'm just going to copy this as well. Let's bring them all so I can copy the styles. All right, so I'm going to go back to the cover here and paste them so that I can use it as a guide. You'll notice that this is almost about the right location of what we had here before. So I had a set image on the first slide and I had an image placeholder on the second. So to do that, I'm just going to move this out of the way because I'm keeping these mostly to copy the styles. Once I'm done, I'm going to duplicate this so I can create a second one with an image placeholder. But for now, I want to go and get an image to put in this particular box. So I can't can't remember where I got this, but it was most likely from here. So I'm going to go insert picture and I'm going to say stock photo. So I'm just going to pick now a stock photo. I'm going to say city. Let's find something that looks a little bit kind of that would match my template. Maybe this one here. This looks like it could match. It's got that blue city. So I'm going to put that here and I'm going to move this out of the way. So now I can take that image and send it to the back. And I'm going to think of, okay, how would that fit in the text box? So I can pick the right location I want it to fit in the text box. I mean the shape, not the text box. Let's see, maybe I need those buildings like that. So I'm going to choose the image and that shape, and then I'm going to go back here to format shape, merge, and I'm going to say fragment. So now I can delete the outside and you can see I have the image. So I want to get that shadow that I have here. Now, of course, you can put your own shadow. You can go into the shape effects shadow. You can see here I've picked the first one. So maybe I can do that the same here. I can go into shadow and pick that. And you can see it's got my image shadow and I have that spacing. Now, it's not exact, but you get the idea of how it's made. So now I need to add the icon. So I'm going to go in here and bring that icon from here. And since it's a vector icon, I can just paste it. So I'm going to bring it over here and now I can make it white. And now you can see why I like to work with vector files, because if this was a PNG, I would not be able to work with it. So now I have my cover slide and I can animate it, because if you notice on my cover here, I created some animation. So it's up to you if you want to animate them on the slides. I have already animated this, so let me show you how it would look like. My animation. You can see it's got that kind of an animation, which is another video. So I'm not going to mention animation right now, but I wanted to show you that you can create animations even on placeholders. You can see here I have that animation. So I'm going to go now and create an image placeholder here so that you can use it to put your own image. So first of all, I'm going to get the icon. So let me put the icon in here and then we can remove these. And I'm going to make this blue dark navy box into an image placeholder. So to do that, I'm going to click on Slide Master, Insert Picture, and I'm going to place a picture placeholder. So you'll notice here, I just want to make sure that that picture covers all that box. And I want to make sure now that I'm selecting the picture. I don't want that icon. So let me just move that. I don't want it's not letting me. So let me just move the picture to the back, just temporarily move to the back. Send to the back. So I just want to pick the picture and pick that. Let's see if it works. I might have to put the picture at the front, because sometimes I feel like right now the picture is at the back. You'll notice if I say it's at the back. So let's see if it works. And if you click the picture in that shape, I have a feeling it might not. If I say intersect, it worked. So it did work. And you can see now if I move over, I've got that image placeholder. So I want to make this visible because right now it's not very clear. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say format shape. I'm going to give it a pattern so that I can see it. You can see right now it's white. I can't see that pattern. So I'm going to make that pattern foreground white and the background blue. Now I can see it. So I can pick one of these patterns so that people know that this is a picture placeholder. So I also like to see that word because right now you can see it's not visible. So what you can do with that word, you can also center it, and I can make it in the middle so that people can see that it's going to prompt them to add a picture to click on the icon. So I've got my image placeholder. Now I need to add that shadow. If you recall that the first picture had a shadow. So I'm going to add a shadow. And now if I wanted to, I can go and animate those as well. So you can see I've got my permanent cover. I've got my cover with the image placeholder. And now I can click on animation and animate any of these. So that's how you would create image placeholders for covers and subsequent covers. So I'm going to rename the slide because if you recall, the first one was title slide. So I like to keep my names clean. So I'm going to call it title slide alternate. So that's how we created the cover and the subcover. So you'll notice I have these. I created one with the number, which you can do, and some of the extra image placeholders. So let's see, what about the section break? So you can see here I have a section break. Let me show you how I did that as well. I went here into the section break, right click, you can duplicate. And so I'm going to create this one here, rename, section header, and I'm going to call it dark. So let's rename that, and I'm going to go here into background and I'm going to make it dark. Now notice how everything switched, even that top triangle, because I had picked the right white. So now you can see why I pay a lot of attention to the top slide. And now I just want to make the footer a little bit darker, because I think it's too much of a lighter font. So I'm going to go in here and pick, rather than the white, I'll pick one of the grays. I think that way it'll match some of these as well. So I've got my section break. So now how do I go about and create this blue box and this one? So I can just go to the top here, copy this one, add it, and you can notice because it's a dark right away, the white became blue. So, but that's okay, because I can always go back in here and switch it. So I'm going to switch here back to the white. So I've got that white background, and I want to hide the background. I don't want this in here. So I'm going to click here, Format Background, Hide. So you can see now we took that out from the top corner. You'll notice I can do that even on the dark background. So I'm going to remove it. And then I can create a second shape and give it that transparent background. So to save time, I just wanted to show you, I'm going to put that here in place, send to the back. And that's how you'd create section breaks. So I've got this in place. So you can see how we did the covers, the section breaks. And now if you wanted to create image placeholders, kind of like the ones we have here, now it's up to you. What I would usually do is I would take this primary slide and I would duplicate it. So that's how I usually create them. Let me just move that towards the bottom. And what I might do is I might move this slightly to the edge, and then I get to decide if I need an image placeholder with the background or not. For example, you'll notice in my idea here, I've got one with no icon, I've got one with an icon, and then I've started creating. They're very simple shapes, and now you know how to do them. And you can see by putting that blue in the background, because the image will always be at the front. So in these particular cases, I did not want to intersect them, but on the cover, I had to create that intersection so that I can make sure that the icon shows. So let me scroll. What else do we have? Then I have these slides, which is also very common. You just have to create these boxes, animate them. That's what I did. You'll notice it's got the title. So it's very basic. I think by now you should be able to create that. You can duplicate the same one here, duplicate the top one and move things around. And then you can hide. You can see on this one, the background is hidden. Let me see here if I rename. Format background, you'll notice that the background is hidden. So I think you get the idea, and in this particular shape as well, it's just the title. So what I might do is I might duplicate this one. And the way I would do that is I would duplicate, and then I would create a section. I would create text, because I want to make sure it's actually a title, not a text box. You'll notice I'm working with that hierarchy. I want to make sure that there's always that title in place. So that's where now I would go make it center, and then I get to decide, do I need this icon or not? I'm not sure. Do I have it here? Yes, I have that icon, so I can keep it, and then I can create a dark version of it and rename it. Of course, every time you create something new, you rename it. The same idea with the questions, the same idea with the icons here with the quote marks. This is very simple, and the same thing with the ending. So I hope this gives you an idea of how to go about and create these custom image placeholders, and now you can work on it for your presentation. So how do you come up with ideas? How do you know how to create these text boxes? So in the next segment, I'm going to show you some samples of where to find inspiration and how to create layouts based on existing slides and designs. So now you know the principles of setting up a template, but how do you come up with design inspiration? Because it's easy to know the foundations and the principles, but coming up with custom layouts that fit the brand can be a bit challenging. So in this segment, I'm going to show you where to find design inspiration for your templates. Now for design ideas, PowerPoint does come with some starter ideas. So if you start a new presentation and you click here on the design, you're going to find, of course, that theme option that we talked about earlier. So you can pick any one of these, and then you can just go into the view master, slide master, and start customizing the boxes and the layout to fit your brand. So you can see that there's quite a bit of a variety, but of course there are millions of people that are using PowerPoint, so chances are they are doing the same. So this could be an option if you're in a rush. There's another option if you are a member of Office 360, you can click here on the design ideas and you'll notice that PowerPoint will start showing you some ideas. Now this seems to be a hit and miss because they seem to be different every time I click on them. But if you only have one slide and you're on the title, PowerPoint is going to suggest some themes for you. So for example, if you like one of these, let me just see if there's anything a little bit better. I'm going to click. You can see here, still not that great. Let's keep clicking more. Now this is AI generated, so it's generated by artificial intelligence. So let me see if I pick this one. Let's see, that looks a little bit different. And now if I go into the layouts, you're going to notice that PowerPoint has already created that theme for me. So now I can go in here and start customizing it, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video. But for now, I wanted to show you that this could be an option. But these are all still limited and they're not really that creative. So I want to show you some of the resources that I use to go get some templates. I have a membership with this website here called Envato Elements. I think I pay around $150 a year, and I have unlimited access to download videos, templates, music, sounds, photos, fonts. There's so much, including presentation templates. So if I click here on presentation templates, you're going to find that there are over 32,000 PowerPoint templates that I can use for inspiration. Now, I've been a member here for several years and I've downloaded many of them, and including this one. So I'm going to show you this one here that I downloaded recently. Now, you might notice something familiar about this template, which is, let me just see, this image placeholder. You might see I use this here as an inspiration. Where is it? This layout for that Newcastle template. So I did like that layout. Now I downloaded this because I have a membership, so I can just download them. And the way I would download them is if I'm a member. So you can see here, I had downloaded it and I tagged it for Newcastle. So that way I can tag and buy a license for a particular client. So because I use this template already for Newcastle, I'm not going to download it again because I have downloaded it. Now I want to show you what it looks like. So this is the file that I received, and I'm going to open it now and I'm going to show you how I use it as a starting point for inspiration. Now, at first glance, this looks amazing. You'll notice like, wow, this looks good. I can use a lot of this. But then if you start clicking on some of the elements, you're going to notice it's not a heading. So you can see here, whoever created that file doesn't know how to work with templates, because you notice that the theme is still Calibri and they haven't done any of that. And then I figured, okay, well, what about the layouts? Let me click on the layouts. Once again, look at this. Is this a template or not? So I'm going to walk you through into the View Master Slide Master. And unfortunately, you're going to realize that this is not really a template. It's just a bunch of image placeholders. So that's what I find. They are great for inspiration, but they are a major disappointment if you plan to use them as a template. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how you can take a file like this, how you can clean it up and turn it into a template. Because right now it looks great. Maybe you can borrow some of the image placeholders, but apart from that, it's not really a template, and it's good for manual formatting, not necessarily for systemization, especially if you're in a large organization. This would be a huge disappointment. And unfortunately, that's what many of the templates on this website are, because I've downloaded so many of them. Some of them are better than others, but I would say so far 95% have not been set up as a template. So in the next video, I'll show you how to clean them up. Now, my other resource is I also have a membership with Canva. I like Canva because I get some inspiration and get some ideas. So I also sometimes come in here, and you'll notice that now Canva does have presentation templates. So you can see here, they have a lot of starting points that I can use. So for example, if I need a brand style guides, I can say here brand guideline presentation, and you're going to notice that there's so many of them. So I would usually like that, and let's say we can pick one here, 2020 brand guidelines. Let's say I like this one. So let's just pretend, actually it has too much gradient. Let me go find something else. Let's see, what about a business template plan? Okay, so this could be an idea. We can use this as a starting point, but it doesn't seem to have image placeholders. I'm trying to find something with some image placeholders. Let's see about this one. Okay, this one seems to have some nice layout. So if I say apply all 10 slides, you're going to notice that I've got some ideas now to work with. Now, The advantage with Canva is it lets me download it as a PowerPoint. So in the next video, I'm going to show you what happens. Actually, let me just show you right now so you can see why this still needs cleanup. So I'm going to download it as a PowerPoint. Let me download, and I'm going to show you how this file looks like and what you can do with it. So I'm going to save. It's saved it into my downloads, and now I'm going to go get that from the download folder. So this is the one that I just got from Canva. It's a good starting point. I do like these shapes. I can use them for inspiration. But once again, if I look on the template, look what we have here. It's not a proper template. So this still needs a lot of cleanup. The first thing would be to clean up the size. So you can see here it's using a custom. It's not using the PowerPoint. So there's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done here. In the next video, I will show you how to clean something up like this and turn it into a template. So congratulations, you just completed part 1. In video number 2, I'm going to show you how to take any file and clean it up and convert it into a reusable template so that you can make your life easier, your team's life easier, and even your client's life easier. So watch out for video number 2.